Hello and welcome everybody. It's my great pleasure today to welcome you on another episode of Froggeeks Green Tech Talks. You know me, my name is Jana Skokan. I'm the co-founder of Froggeeks. At Froggeeks, we talk all around sustainable building and living. Pardon me. And today it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Louis Thompson from Nomadic Resorts here with us. Hello. Good morning, Louis. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, Jenna. Thanks for allowing me to participate. It's a pleasure to be here.
I mean, you see already the image behind me in the background. That's the type of buildings that Nomadic Resorts, and Louis, please correct me if I kind of confuse the two units, design and develop for apparently people that love to travel, love to have special and unique experiences. And this is also the discussion or the topic for us today. Now, let me give you also, for those of you that do not know Nomadic Resorts or Nomadic-Escapes, let me give you a little intro on Louis and his team and his work. So Louis Thompson is a designer and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience working with some of the world's leading hotel groups, taking eco-resorts, treehouses, lodge, spa retreats, and tented camps project from inception through design, engineering, construction, pre-opening to successful operations. Now, this includes also developments with a value of between $5 million for smaller bespoke projects up to 150 million US luxury mixed-use developments. As a founder and CEO of Nomadic Resorts, the company has flourished since its launch in 2011, winning multiple international accolades and awards. One of them is Global Game Changer Award 2020 and the UNESCO Commercial Architecture Award in 2018. I believe also one of your recent projects, Madi-Hia, was recognized recently in 2024, also with another architectural award. So with the team's latest venture, Nomadic-Escapes, it's a groundbreaking nature-positive lodging brand that delivers outstanding guest experiences, supports local economies, and regenerates the ecosystems. With this, let me welcome again, Louis. Now, it's quite an intro, very impressive. The company has already a long history, beautiful designs. When you go to the website, highly recommend it for those of you that love to travel and love sustainability, love to be close to nature. Definitely visit them and see what is in there for you. Louis, can you maybe share with us how this idea to create something like this, or to start designing such locations for tourists, for people that want to kind of travel and spend their time outside, how this concept came together?
Yeah, okay. So basically, my background was that I used to work for a company called Six Senses Resorts and Spas, which was a kind of leader in wellness hospitality. Is a leader in wellness hospitality. And they were designing resorts with a strong focus on the spa element across Asia and also in the Indian Ocean. And I worked for them for a long time, for nearly 10 years, putting together their kind of sustainability framework, particularly the technical services part, the kind of part that goes to developers. But I also did kind of on-site work of supervising and project managing special projects, which were typically kind of bamboo things, and also some zero carbon lodging. And I worked on a project called Sonavakiri in Thailand, which is a luxury tented resort. Very complicated project in a very complicated location on an island off the coast of Cambodia. And that project took a long time. It took 4 years. So at the end of the project, we sat down and we asked ourselves, how would you have done this more effectively and to some extent cheaper? And we came up with the idea that basically hotels of the future would be flat packed, would be manufactured in a controlled environment in a factory. You could make a mock-up, you could assemble the mock-up, test it, check it, and then disassemble things and then ship them to these desert island locations where it's quite challenging for construction because, you're a long way from the mainland. You can't just go and buy a couple of screws and, if your hammer breaks, your hammer really breaks, and then you could be waiting 3 days for a hammer. So we learned a lot about, I suppose, off-grid construction. And at the end of that project, we concluded that basically in the future, we'd be able to build different kinds of tented experiences in a completely different way, and using latest software. And so we set up Nomadic Resorts in 2012, and we decided we were going to focus on that specific niche, the kind of tented experience, what we call outdoor lodging. And it was a bit of a gamble, as these things are. But fundamentally, and I think this is still pertinent today, what led us in this direction was the notion that what travelers were actually looking for, or actually hoping to experience, is quite different from the traditional hotel industry. So if you look at the trend reports, you'll see that people want to be off grid, or they want to go to remote locations, they want to interact with nature, they want to reconnect, personal development, wellness, all these different things in community. But the traditional hotel industry has had a hard time delivering those things. And I think that's more relevant today than ever before.
Absolutely. Could not agree with you. So there are so many questions that come to my mind, because maybe just take it step by step. You mentioned several elements around the technical aspects, flat-packed hotels or simplicity, off-grid construction. I really appreciate those points, and also the connection to nature. I mean, it's a huge trend. Also, alternative lodging. It's as of the reports in 2021, I believe it's around 20% of the total global revenue from the global lodging revenues that are generated. So it's an interesting part. It's not like a minor, small niche. It's growing and it's blooming, and it's a massive trend. So. And it's also connected to environmental sustainability. So it has to be viable economically and environmental sustainable. Now, you have a very interesting concept combination with these local communities. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you incorporate regeneration, and what type of sustainability do you kind of build in or integrate in the projects and the concepts that you design?
So obviously, because I've been working on sustainability at Six Senses for a long time, it was something that was very close to my heart. But what we had observed was a notion called biophilia, which is this kind of innate human need to affiliate with your natural environment. And we realized that was going to be a very important part of how people feel in buildings. So we'd like to think that we kind of go past that sustainability question. I think, sustainability obviously is critical, but there's also a kind of added element to that, is that we need to find ways for people to appreciate nature in a different way and, reconnect with nature, particularly in this day and age where, digital distraction, ADHD, loneliness, pandemic, all of these things are becoming very important societal concerns. We really believe that using biophilic design, biomimicry, we can create spaces in which people can learn to revalue their relationship with their natural environment. So obviously we look at sustainable materials, we look at economic sustainability, which is really important. Things have to work, otherwise they disappear. And then there's the social element to it, which is also very important. So we have been focused on designing things that can be built in collaboration with local communities. So at Wild Coast Tented Lodge, for example, though the buildings look very, very complex, people often don't realize that we didn't just design the resort, we also built the resort with a team of 100 local fishermen from the village of Corinda. Go Corinda. If any of you guys are watching. So basically we brought in some technicians in bamboo construction and also in tent installation. And we taught these guys how to do it, and they built the resort themselves, which really quite changes the dynamic between the resort and the community. Because, when we finished the resort, we invited all of their families to come and visit. And of course, these guys have been disappearing day after day. And I think their families never really fully understood exactly what they were doing. So when their children and their wives all turned up, they were kind of quite amazed to see that, the Krinda village fishermen had built this quite remarkable structure in one of the most remote parts of Sri Lanka in Yala National Park. So I think that that's a really strong part of inclusion, so that we really need to work out new models of hospitality where local communities benefit economically. All of those people were relatively well paid compared to their traditional salaries expected in that area. And we've got to change the way that hospitality interacts with local communities and local cultures. And we've got to stop using local culture as some kind of entertainment on a Friday evening of watching some people do a traditional dance, and really work out a new paradigm in which local communities can participate in the tourism that happens in their area. And if we do that successfully, then I think we can make valuable economic contributions to places that really need it, rather than just all the profits going out to big contractors or design firms. So sustainability is key, but also regenerative design is also a critical part of our process. So we believe, and we increasingly believe now, that we can design spaces that enhance the biodiversity of the natural environment, and that rather than simply using a focus on conservation, we can actually improve the natural capital of the spaces where we operate.
Now, this is a super interesting, point which you bring up, because do you have any measurement process or something? People are many times driven by data. So we have all this off-grid, or we are somewhere on an island, and now we say, yes, we increase biodiversity. How do you work on this concept now, when everybody wants to include it also in their CSR, whatever they have a policy in the company, investors, everybody's looking at that, even if they are having this. Can we kind of monitor that? How do you do this? And what are the type of collaborations that you have to kind of, and is it needed at all for you, Lois? What do you say about this?
Okay, I think this is a touchy subject for many people, myself included. We can become obsessed with measurement. Okay. Measurement is not the objective, right? The objective is to create sustainable spaces. So how I ended up focusing on the tents was quite an interesting story. I have a master's degree in environmental architecture, and I'd been learning to do life cycle analysis, which is the idea that you evaluate the impact of the building by breaking it into its components and then defining the carbon footprint of each of those components in relation to its mass and the volume of material and transportation and the work, and et cetera, et cetera. And eventually you end up with some kind of carbon footprint of the building. So I built a zero carbon eco villa with a green roof, looks like a hobbit hole, locally sourced timber, mud bricks made on site, green roof plants propagated on site. In many ways, it was kind of archetypical green building endeavor. But when I did the life cycle analysis, I realized that it was just too heavy. There was just too much stuff involved. So then I realized that basically the lighter the architecture, inherently, the smaller the carbon footprint. So if you imagine that you build a block on the beach, a traditional box on the beach style hospitality product, and it weighs, that there's 400 tons of concrete involved. the advantage of the tent materials is that this whole thing is much lighter. So instead of being 400 tons, it might be 2 tons. And of course, that has a very, very important effect on the carbon footprint of the project. Second thing is then you come into this whole realm of LEED, BREEAM, and many others. That's the kind of green building traditional certification systems, and I was a lead AP. But within that framework, it's very much developed to cater to office buildings, to be perfectly honest, or it was at the time that I was involved. And what we realized is, again, a lot of these smaller structures just couldn't fit into those frameworks. So though I admire and I recognize the contributions that the green building councils across the world have made, I think that really the key is to identifying strategies from the concept stage that are inherently ecological in their processes. So do we need certification? Yes, of course, for many different building types. Is it perfectly adapted to remote tented camps and wellness retreats? Probably not so much. So for example, let's say we use bamboo a lot, and building behind you, Madi here in Maldives, is entirely made out of bamboo, with the exception of the jetty, which is already existent. So that's a carbon positive material. Basically, it absorbs significant amounts of carbon dioxide to growth. It's rapidly renewable technology, rapidly renewable resource rather. So starting with the materiality of the project from the outset, you were always going to be more sustainable. You didn't need to have, reams of paperwork and boxes to tick, because it was self-evident that we were already on the right path. And I think people have to remember that for the green building certification, a lot of it is about your conceptual approach. In terms of the operation, energy consumption, all of those things, I agree, are critical. And we try to avoid air conditioning whenever we can, because air conditioning represents a massive part of the carbon footprint life cycle of the building. So yeah, I guess measurement is great, and I'm sure lots of people enjoy measuring all these different things and looking at different meters, but it's probably not really what we do best. And I think other people probably are better at that stuff than we are.
Wonderful. And so now back to, you mentioned before that, the type of buildings or the type of the projects which you built together with the local community. Now, you were also recognized as one of the most innovative startups, I believe in 2021, or was it by one of the UN organizations, for being extremely innovative as a startup, especially in the rural development. Now you come to a community that is very distant from what we kind of know, where people are extremely skilled or educated in various. Was education at any point a problem or a challenge for you? If so, how did you overcome it? I mean, how would you also maybe kind of do it different in future projects?
Okay, so education. For example, my background is I have a degree in European politics, which is really not the most useful thing. So those 4 years of my life were probably not the best. It's quite interesting as an observer to see Brexit, but fundamentally, I think we're going through a education upheaval. I think that the accessibility of vast troves of information on the internet, is going to significantly change the way that we define skills. I think one of the things that I feel is very, very important, and my own son is studying, a very hands-on course, is that we need to value craftsmanship. Okay, this is something that has been neglected and derided in some societies, particularly in many parts of the world, actually. And I think we really need to relearn an appreciation for tradesmen, carpenters, metal workers, plumbers, electricians. I think we need to revise a little bit of our perception of these skills. So, for example, in Sri Lanka, we had tremendously skilled people who were living in a very remote location, and all of they needed was a project in which to express that. And for me, I will always maintain that basically the projects are built by people with skills, and not to neglect those skills. I think those skills can be enhanced or it's probably a revolution going on in some respects that, the way that things are done are going to be significantly impacted by AI and technology. But I think for me, the one of the key things is to celebrate craftsmanship, skills, and manual labor. I know it sounds old-fashioned as we 3D print buildings, but I think these things are extremely important. So if it was in terms of education, I'd say is, if we want to be able to build the things that we design in an office, we need to make sure that we respect the people who actually do the execution. I'm not sure if that's a great answer to your question, but
I got your point, and it's amazing to share this. And yeah, I definitely agree with this, because it's an element of, I mean, we're going, I think we all can agree that digital is very present. AI is very present. We have it very, very strongly now, coming from all sides, which is in many cases great, because it's a great support. It's very valuable. But on the other hand, I definitely agree that we need to preserve what makes us creative, what makes us, or how we express creativity, how we express our humanity, I would say, how we let it flow. So I definitely see that as a point, and especially in such a way, architecture is a great vehicle for that. Now, going back to also biodiversity art, and you mentioned that you built in a way that you believe that you increase the biodiversity in a location. So, are there any measures that you take that are complementing the design or the development itself, which you can share, or how do you manage this? That you have. Is it a goal? Is it an official goal that we want to build in this place? It's beautiful. We want to make it thrive even after our lodges are here.
so I think this is going to be a really exciting space in the future. So when you find yourself in a virgin site, and sometimes that can be very intimidating, and you think, wow, nobody should do anything here, right? That's also so. Firstly, I think is it primum non nocere, what they use in the medical community? First, do no harm. I think that's one of the things. And then obviously with projects, most projects need to have an EIA or some kind of environmental assessment. So often you have a benchmark of the biodiversity levels in the space. Now, where I think we're going to go into a very interesting new world is that I think that we will be able to design buildings that provide habitat not only for the travelers and tourists themselves, but I also think that we'll be able to develop landscape design techniques and architectural techniques to provide habitat for various types of biodiversity within the building shell itself, and that we can actually encourage or increase the numbers of nesting birds by planting certain kinds of trees. We can improve water quality using tertiary filtration, reed beds, etc. We can do a lot of things to actually improve the biological integrity of spaces now. And we can even do things like, if you look at some of the use of mycelium and the work of people like Paul Stamets, where there's even sort of bioremediation, micro-remediation strategies that can be done to remove pollutants from the environment. And I think one of the things that technology will allow us to do is to explore those technologies in greater depth, and even find ways of harnessing different species to fulfill different ecological functions within a landscape, so that essentially you could use mussels and shellfish and different crustaceans to help you filter water. You could use reeds to remove pollutants. You can, create wildlife hotels for different species. And I think that's kind of going to be a kind of interesting space where, and then ideally you'd measure that by doing regular transacts and, monitoring the populations of different keystone species. And I think this is where it will dovetail with rewilding, where we'll see that the keystone species can be integrated into new spaces, like the wolves in Yellowstone National Park as an example, to basically change the biological processes and dynamics that are underway in that environment. And here I'm thinking, for example, in Mauritius, the reintroduction of giant tortoises was of massive biological benefit to the endemic forest areas, because many of those species had specific functions that allowed endemic trees to grow or thrive. So I think the digital age and these kind of AI technologies could really radically change how we perceive these things. And even I saw a thing the other day where, they're looking at AI technology to understand animal languages. So maybe in 20, 30 years' time, not only will you be able to develop an environment to cater to the whims and needs of dugongs, but you'll be able to understand what they say about it. So who knows what the future holds? But I think that this kind of rewilding style landscape design is something that is going to be tremendously successful, and very, very important in the future.
So this is beautiful. I mean, we tend to have guests, of course, also from the very progressive technological side, which have developed various solutions for filtering water or solar systems or whatsoever, membranes, what you have there, but also very traditional, very nature-connected solutions. So this is a very exciting point if we can really make this leap and make the fusion of we bring the good from the new tech, and we understand how we can collaborate or make this symbiosis work with nature and with all the systems, with all the animals that we have there, to kind of create a balance and a beautiful, livable environment for us and for leisure, and of course for urban environments as well, or what you have. So very, very exciting, this vision when you share it like this, that I already see like green landscapes and a lot of hopefully animals, hopefully a lot of
One of the other things that I think is going to be very, very fascinating is neuroscience, and they have these things called haptic sensors where you can basically measure the brain's behavior in different environments and see how your brain reacts to different environments. I think it's going to have a huge impact on architecture. We call it neuroarchitecture at the moment. Very interesting book by Thomas Heatherwick called Humanized, which touches on this. Is that within that measurement, we may be able to find not only how you feel or you will feel in an environment, but also how you feel in relation to the landscape. So, what impact does a flock of nesting birds have on your brain if you can see it and witness it? And I think that again will be a fascinating area of expertise where people will be able to create virtual models of buildings and then really, and even landscapes, and really understand how the brain will react emotionally to those spaces. And that could change architecture quite a lot, because what they might find is a lot of the actual buildings that we currently inhabit are not very beneficial to your neurological health. So these are all of these technologies kind of dovetailing in a very interesting way.
So let's go to the next question. I mean, you mentioned also these virgin locations and Now, how do you come to the idea, hey, this is an amazing location for us? This is because it's really like a dream, Come there, you see it, and then, the designs come up. How do you select those? How do you come across them?
Actually, normally that's the owners of the place come and see us. So quite often what happens, because of our reputation, people with the sites of exceptional beauty will come and ask us to design something for them. So we end up in lots of different places. I've ended lots of beautiful places, I'm happy to say. But with that beauty comes responsibility, and that can be quite a difficult challenge when you have the kind of financial imperatives of investors, and how do you explain to those investors that one strategy may have a different kind of benefit from what would be traditionally shown on a spreadsheet. So in answer to the question, people come see us, they say, look, I've got an amazing beachfront property or a private island, or a mountain, a tea plantation overlooking a waterfall, or whatever it is. And then we will go there, and quite often we won't do what they expect us to do. We will wander around and look for little things. We'll look for insects, shells, seeds, rock formations, fruits, leaf forms, and often the inspiration for the project will come from the site itself, and that's where this notion of biomimicry also becomes an important aspect. So the building behind you was inspired by pink whip rays that live in that lagoon, and I think that can enhance what we call the genius loci, or the sense of place. So we do sometimes actively go out and try to find people to do projects in specific environments. I think in Bamboo Mountain in southeast Mauritius, that was something that was important to us. It was one of the last remaining endemic forest areas, and we felt that there was a significant potential to develop a tourism offering that could have a positive ecological legacy by enhancing the ebony forest that existed in that area, and that was very important to us. But typically, sometimes it can be a dual-edged sword. You can say, very recently, I was taken to a place where I was like, I'm not sure we should do anything on this site, and I'm not sure you should either. But of course, if someone's invested millions of dollars in doing something, that can be a tricky conversation. Sometimes you just have to say no to people.
Interesting. Absolutely interesting point that you make now. And the next question would be, what are kind of the biggest challenges that you have? You come to a location for construction.
I think that's a really, really complicated story. So one of the reasons,
in short,
everything's complicated, but basically a lot of construction machinery is big, cumbersome, and kind of scary. Can you imagine if you were attacked by an excavator? It would be a terrible experience. If you introduced an excavator to a medieval monk, I think they'd be terrified. So basically, one of the things that I witnessed over and over again was this kind of access problem of these big machines, and then them tearing up the land and really creating a kind of devastating damage to the soil.
I feel and see what you mean exactly.
I think we all even see it. We all know it deep down. I think when you see a bulldozer kind of crashing through the jungle, I don't think anybody's going to pretend that that's biologically beneficial. So what we did is one of the things that we spent a lot of time thinking about is how to develop the tent models so that everything could be carried by two people by hand, which sounds like a relatively straightforward thing, but obviously it's not. But that allowed us to basically place buildings into the environment without using those huge machines, which in turn, allowed the access pathways to be much smaller. And I think, that can be something that really can make a huge difference to how the final product looks. Because I think, places can be scarred, right? And I think that damage is, and I'm going to sound very hippie here, but you'll have to forgive me. But I think that the kind of damage that's done to the land has a frequency, and that frequency can exist for a long time. So how do you minimize that damage? I think you basically try to develop a building methodology that requires minimum disruption. That's what we call low impact building.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you for sharing, Luis. And yeah, now looking also a little bit at a time, I think we need to start wrapping up. So maybe you can tell us something a little bit more about the nomadic resorts versus the nomadic escapes. What's the difference between them, and where can people actually find you for what? Where we look for the design services, if we look for, wow, I mean, I would like to do something with those people. They seem to kind of love the same thing that I do. So how to find you, how to find the right contacts, and also where to book maybe a stay in one of your resorts or camps.
Okay, so Nomadic Resorts is a multidisciplinary design company. So we do architecture, landscape design, master planning, interior design, and typically we will work on hospitality projects, but we have been doing a few other things recently, including some residential, a museum, and occasionally things like schools. That company is focused very much on biomimicry, biophilic design, and regenerative landscaping. So to see our projects and understand what we do, you can go to www.nomadicresorts.com. That company also sells tents for the hospitality industry. So we have a range of different pods, which can be tiny homes, or they can be eco resorts, or they can be different things. But we also have a separate company, which we launched relatively recently, called Nomadic-Escapes. And Nomadic-Escapes is quite a different idea. So the idea of Nomadic-Escapes is that basically we believe that, one, the hospitality industry can potentially be a vehicle for good in the world, as opposed to being an extractive and exploitative sector. We believe that there are hospitality models that can improve the environment and benefit local communities directly. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that we believe that people need a break from their current stressful life experiences. And we're seeing this more and more in the data. If you look at booking.com's trends for 2024 and 2025, you can see that people are looking for off-grid, wellness-focused retreats. And that's what we're going to do with Nomadic-Escapes. We're going to build tented camps which allow people to do adventure sports. So we believe in the strength and the importance of hiking, sailing, paddle sports, surfing, kite surfing. We think this can be hugely beneficial to people's personal well-being. We believe it needs to be at the forefront of sustainability. And we also believe that people need to eat healthy, nourishing, locally sourced produce, and that's part of our wellness offering. So we're going to be opening the first ones in Mauritius, Nomadic-Escape at Bamboo Mountain, Nomadic-Escape at Ombalaba. But we also have several projects under development, which we hope to see in other areas of sub-Saharan Africa and the Indian Ocean. So we're raising investment at the moment for these ventures and looking to create basically communities as opposed to resorts. So places where people can come and stay for a given period of time, practice their different activities that they want to, learn about local culture, taste the local food, and interact authentically with the local community. So that's really what Nomadic-Escapes is about. It's still relatively young, but of course we think that it's got the potential to meet a kind of gap in the market where people are looking for this kind of product, and hopefully it will be successful.
Absolutely, definitely. And let me also ask you the last question of today, I believe, with almost closing our conversation today. And I hope we're going to have a part two, at least, around some of your projects, which are super exciting. And so what is the next big thing coming up? You mentioned 2 projects that you're now kind of developing or finalizing. Maybe you can just share something with our audience that is the next big thing for you.
Yeah, I think the next big thing for us is the Tamara Boathouse project in Kerala.
Mm.
So we designed an incredible floating resort using the traditional Kerala boathouse typology, and then making it a little bit more sophisticated. So that will be opening next year, and that's almost most of the project is made from bamboo. It's all inspired by a lotus. So the name Tamara means lotus. And basically, we've developed a whole resort with 34 floating rooms, as well as executive villas on land and meeting rooms and spas. And so that's a big project for us, and that will be a very interesting thing that's coming up. And then I guess, Bamboo Mountain, I think, is also going to be a very exciting new kind of hospitality product, where we really have tried to integrate all of the things that we thought were cool in the past, including sort of treetop dining pods and a different kind of spa experience, and much more holistic approach to that part of the hospitality equation. I think those things are going to be pretty exciting. And then I think, we will also be, investigating new kinds of technologies in the future, which I will explain at length in another time.
Super, super excellent. So this is all exciting news. Thank you so much, Luis, for taking the time, being here with us, having this exciting conversation, very, very interesting and insightful as well, and also sharing your projects that are in place or coming. And I thank you all for being here with us, and I see you on the next one.
Thank you very much for having me, Jana. It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.